this is a PowerPoint on the best tribes in Hearthstone. Starting at number 11, we have Quilo. This one is very obviously the worst one in the game. They have absolutely no synergy between each other whatsoever, unlike every single other tribe, which says a lot. This is also the smallest tribe in the entire game with only 20 minions. Every single other tribe has more, even Naga, or especially Undead, other tribes that come out after Quilo just have significantly more. There's just nothing to do with it, is the easiest way to describe it. The few few Quilo that do exist are relatively strong. Not many of them are great, but they're not terrible to say the least. So you can't say that it's a horrible tribe. It's just the worst. Especially, it's by far the worst if you are talking about tribal synergies, which is mostly what this video is going to be talking about as well. There's just I don't know what more to say. They just designed this whole tribe and then didn't actually make it have any synergies because it was just designed for Battlegrounds. Which they, retroactively changed when they designed Undead and Naga for Battlegrounds. They decided to actually make them real tribes. So I don't really know why they did this for Quilo, but it is a little bit annoying because Quilboars are kind of cool. A lot of the cards are just cool. Like, I like playing Zokfogs now in my Hero Power Druids. I like playing Death Speaker Blackthorn in my Death Rattle Demon Hunters, but they don't synergize with each other at all. Then, for number 10, I chose Undead. This is the newest tribe introduced in March of the Lich King that synergizes all about Undeads dying. You have cards like Elder Nadok, Soulburner Varia, which benefit from either destroying Undeads, seeing your Undeads die, things like that. There are cards that if you had an Undead die since I think it's since the end of your last turn is the wording they use, then they can gain additional benefits. Undead have only had one expansion of full support outside of Death Knight, which gets Undead all the time, but the cards that were introduced were okay. They weren't anything crazy. You had later cards like Varia, which is additionally on the screen, that came out in Titans, which do still synergize with Undead, so it is a tribe that they're not going to forget, at least, so that is nice, but they weren't anything special. It's not like Undead decks were just the best decks ever, or were incredibly powerful at certain points in time, anything like that. They were just kind of okay, and then, for Death Knight, especially because Death Knight has almost exclusively Undeads, they're still very, individually strong as cards that just have the Undead tag. They don't really synergize with each other that well, so Undead still stay pretty low, but again, they are very new. Then for number 9, I chose Elementals. If you've watched any of my videos, you know that Elementals are terrible. I can't ever buff them enough. The Elemental decks are very bad, and they just don't work. The gimmick behind Elementals is that you chain them across turns. If you play an Elemental on 1, your Elemental on 2 can actually benefit from its battle cry. But if you didn't play an Elemental on 1, that Elemental on 2 wouldn't be able to use its effect. Usually, that's fine, because if you have enough Elementals, you can chain them off and it doesn't matter, right? But when you have these bad Elementals, when you don't have any good ones, you suffer immensely for your few good ones, because they can't actually get their effect off. Elementals are, how do I describe this? They have a condition and then are, on average, a little bit stronger than their cost because of that condition. I say a little bit because you have cards, say, Gyreworm. It's a 3-mana, 3/2 Battlecry. If you play an Elemental last turn, deal 3 damage instead of deal 2 damage, which is what it typically is. But it's still an understated minion. It still has a condition, and then only benefits +1 damage from what else would be at that mana cost. They started to introduce these sort of chaining Elementals, I would like to call it, like Scar the Catastrophe, as you can see right here, that is improved by each turn in a row you've played an Elemental. So they are offering a mini rework to the Elemental tribe in Scar, in Lamplighter that has just come out, and Overflow Surger, things like that. In the past, Elementals, peak, how do I call it, big card, their archetype-defining legendary, things like that, would have been like Kalamos, which gives you an Elemental Evocation, but those were bad. Those were terrible. The Elemental Evocations were genuinely terrible, so Kalamos wasn't able to really do anything. But Elementals were only really good in, United Instormment Elemental Shaman. That was a pretty good deck. Otherwise, you have the random individual Elemental that's pretty decent. That happens every so often. Just like every tribe, you have the random, tribal minion that is just quite good, but the synergistic side of elementals just has never worked out, and it's so bad. Then for number 8, I chose Murlocs. Okay. Yes, Murlocs have been incredibly powerful at a fair amount of different times in Hearthstone. That's not something I'm saying that they weren't. But they have no staying power. When Murlocs are strong, the decks typically are getting nerfed, or they just get pushed out in the next expansion because they're one expansion only, like your Murloc in Sunken City. I can't deny that decks like Tip the Scales or Rise of Shadows, Murloc Shaman, or Anything Can Happen Paladin, those decks were very powerful at the time, but they weren't powerful for very long. They would eventually just be power crept out of the game, and they haven't been powerful in a long time. Like I'm saying, they have a big gap in between their power. They aren't powerful for very long, and they haven't been powerful very often. So that's why I think Murlocs are one of the weaker tribes and definitely should see more support, because people like Murlocs, but they've just become effectively a joke archetype where, you'll just say like something will be a Murloc and it's bad. Then for number 7, I chose Demons. This one might be controversial to put it this low, but Demons at one point were probably the best tribe in the game. When you had Void Lord, Skull the Minari that came out in Kobolds and Catacombs, and you had all these big demon cards in Warlock, it's very, very easy to argue that Demons were the best tribe in the game. But that was, 7 years ago? And they have gotten, negative amounts of support since for, big demon decks. And everyone talks about it. Everyone talks about wanting things like Q-Block to be back in the game, but you can't play these decks anymore. You could make an argument, Demons in Demon Hunter are pretty good. They're okay, but they're not better than the peak of Demons when they were at their peak in Warlock. They're not better than any of the other tribes that I'll be talking about soon. These Demons in Demon Hunter, those decks they're fine. They're okay decks. Most recently is Shopper Demon Hunter. I will say that deck is incredibly powerful. Do not get me wrong. Would I say that's more powerful than the next one on this list, and then, the top 5? No, I would not. But it was quite strong. But it didn't really last very long. It didn't last very long. It has already been nerfed. Just 1 mana nerf, and the deck kind of suffers from it a lot. And if that had been around longer, I would say it was pretty good. If it was playable in Wild, I would say it would probably put it above this as well, if it were playable in Wild. But these two, the next one I'm going to talk about, the standard decks, it has 2 standard decks that are incredibly broken. And I got to talk about Naga. Naga with, Spitelash Siren, Deadeye, or Blind Eye Sharpshooter, and Lady Setheno are just so powerful. It would be a disservice to Naga to not put them at least this high, because Naga are the second newest tribe in the game, coming out in Sunken City. Only 2 expansions before Undead, yet they've already had 2 incredibly meta-defining decks in your Naga Demon Hunter and your Naga Mage to a disgusting degree. For Naga to basically just come out only 2 years ago to already have 2 of the best tribal decks in Standards history, and just a good abusable Naga in Lady Setheno to begin with. Just Naga are so incredibly powerful. You could play, and there were other decks that made use of Naga, not specifically as a full tribal deck. Like you could have Naga being powerful in Hunter and in Priest, just individually powerful Naga that are very, very strong. But when you talk about, Naga Demon Hunter, Naga Priest, Naga Mage, these decks are just unreal levels of powerful, and they're recent. So that makes them more powerful than things from 7 years ago. I guess it would have been 5 years before these came out, or before Spitelash Iron, but still. So it doesn't matter if at one point Demons were the best tribe in the game, in 2017, 2018, when in 2022 and 2023, they're going to be some of the best tribes in the game. Power creep exists. No matter how people try to spin it, doesn't matter if something was the best thing ever 7 years ago, if it's not good at all in the slightest now. So, that's what I'm trying to say, why I believe Naga are better than Demon. Yeah, you can say it's a recency bias, things like that, but yeah, recency does matter. You know, as time goes on, cards get more powerful, so that does matter. That makes them more powerful. Then, for number 5, I chose mechs. This one's pretty obvious. I mean, mechs are incredibly versatile, but there's 2 more tribes on here that are just more versatile than mechs. Yes, Ziliax Deluxe 3000 on its own is probably the most versatile card ever made, but that doesn't mean that mechs as a whole are doing the things that these other 2 tribes that we'll talk about are doing, and as well. Mechs kind of really only have had a few decks that actually can be called dedicated mech decks. Of course, you have, Mech Mage, Hunter back in Boomsday, Control Mech Warrior back in, Rise of Shadows Boomsday era. Mech Paladin and Wild was very powerful because it's benefits incredibly well from hand buffs to mechs. Mech Rogue, was given incredibly powerful cards in Titans, like really powerful cards in Titans. So it was great in Standard. And then, it's hard to talk about because mechs are really tied to 1 or 2 incredibly powerful cards, like your Mech Warper, like your Dr. Boom Mad Genius, and then when those cards are nerfed, there's no more mech decks in Wild. Mech Warper was nerfed from 2 to 4 mana. Mech decks are completely dead in the Wild format. So what does that mean? That means that although mechs have incredibly powerful singular cards, the rest of the the tribe is not that strong because it died with just 1 card being nerfed. So I can't really put mechs any higher than what we'll be talking about next, but it's still definitely powerful enough to be considered a top 5 of all, just in general. Then at number 4, I put dragons. Here's the thing. I know I just said the same thing about mechs, about how they are, typically getting little support, how they're getting, very powerful individual cards that make up for the most of the class and things like that. But dragons have Timewinder Zarimi. Timewinder Zarimi might arguably be one of the most broken cards ever printed. I don't know what to say. I think if dragons and mechs are neck and neck, just the fact that something like Timewinder Zarimi, your Dragon Queen Alexstrasza, these individually ultra powerful cards were just so much better than just the mechs ultra powerful cards that I think it's fair to say that dragons are better. If they're about equal everywhere else, then Ziliax is really strong, but I wouldn't say that Ziliax was better than Timewinder Zarimi or maybe Dragon Queen Alexstrasza. It might be better than DQA, and you could say that, but what else do mechs have to show for them? They have, Dr. Boom Mad Genius. Yeah, that card's good. It was really good, but was that better than Dragon Queen Alexstrasza? That one people could argue, until the cows come home. So that's what I'm trying to get at, right? They fill similar ideas, right? Individually, dragons are very powerful. Full dragon decks have been really good over the years, same as mech decks, but they just get the edge over it, in my opinion, because of these cards, like I'm saying. You have to also just think of it this way, right? What gets more support, dragons or mechs? I mean, there's not many expansions that give mechs support, but dragons get support all the time, just in their individual classes. In Paladin, in Priest, sometimes in Warrior, and mechs are usually given support as a whole expansion, which means that it happens less often. So it's just more likely for dragons to get support as well, and that's kind of where I'm going with this. I don't know. I think you could argue these 2 back and forth till literally forever, but I still think it just is edged out by cards like Timewinder Zarimi, cards like Dragon Queen Alexstrasza, cards like Kazakusan, cards like Raid Boss Onyxia, things like that are just better than the best mech cards. At number 3, I have Beasts. This one is going to be controversial because not because it itself is number 3, but because of what I chose as number 2. Beasts do everything. They are more versatile than mechs and dragons by a significant amount. You can summon big beasts. You can, draw with your beasts. You can mana cheat with your beasts. You can combo with your beasts. You can do everything with beasts. You can have the amount of things that beasts can do, I can't really quantify because there are just so many. Beasts are the biggest tribe in the game, so that does drag them down a lot. That's part of the reason why I wouldn't say that beasts are a top 2 tribe, is because there are so many of them, and so many of them are bad cards. That's just what happens when you have the biggest tribe in the game, right? But on the flip side, there are so many good beast cards because there are so many beasts. It kind of weighs itself out. Beast Hunter was incredibly powerful. It was the best deck in the game, in the entire game in Nathria. It was incredibly powerful in Sunken City. It was okay in like March of the Lich King, and then it just fell off, significantly like throughout 2023. Don't let anyone try and tell you otherwise. It significantly fell off during 2023. And now even in Wizbang's Workshop, an expansion that tried to help, Swarm-style Beast Hunter just wasn't that great. That doesn't change the fact that the deck is great. Beast Druid, incredibly powerful deck. Guardian Animals as a support card for your Survival of the Fittest Druid, incredibly powerful. Yes, and every class has access to beasts. Not every class has continual access to all these other tribes. Do as many classes get as many cards as Druid or Hunter with beasts? No, obviously, but it's a lot different than, say, Elementals, where not every class gets Elementals, not every class gets Dragons consistently, not every class gets Mechs consistently, but every class gets Beasts pretty consistently. I think that's part of the reason why Beasts are so powerful, is that just because so many of them get printed, if you have to roll a 20 on a die, and if every time you roll above a 15, a card's going to be really powerful, that means there's just going to be more powerful beasts because so many of them get printed. That's why I think beasts are solidly at number 3. Okay. People might be upset about this one, but I think number 2 is totems. Now, totems are incredibly specific. Almost all totems are shaman cards. So, unlike most of the other tribes on this list, most of the other tribes have at least one or two other classes that share the burden of, the cards, which means that if shaman just gets a really good set of totems, totems are incredible across the board. They're going to be incredibly powerful across the board. And that happens pretty often. You have your Nathrias, you have your Saviors of Old Dooms. You have things like that, right? Where totems go from being like, they're okay at best, whatever. Shaman gets one really powerful expansion. Totems become incredibly powerful for basically until those cards get power crept, right? And that's what happened, right? Even Shaman, incredibly freaking powerful and wild. Incredibly fucking powerful and wild because of cards like Stonewright, because of your Carving Chisel, things like that. And then as time went on, you don't get as much support because they want to do other things with Shaman. No more support. Now even Shaman isn't that great. But what's going to happen is they're going to, do another round of totem support sometime soon, and boom, totems are going to be incredibly powerful again. This is, a little bit of a cheat code, I would say, for the power level of totems. The fact that they are only tied to the power level of one class. So if you just give a lot of incredibly powerful cards to Shaman, that means totems are really good. Like I'm saying, that is a bit of a cheat code, but that doesn't change the fact that when totems are good, they're really good. Even in Standard, Totem Shaman was really good in Standard. Then at number 1, obviously it's Pirates. I mean, if you've played Hearthstone ever, it's Pirates. They may not be good in Standard currently, but guess what? We're getting another Pirate expansion in Perils in Paradise. Wow, guess what's gonna get buffed again? Pirates. So, Pirates are a weird tribe. They are exclusively aggressive, except for one deck ever, and that is Hooktusk Rogue, which is a combo deck that, makes use of Pirate Admiral Hooktusk to just steal cards from your opponent. But that's the only pirate deck that's ever, any pirate tribal deck that has ever not been an aggressive deck. So, yes, you have, say, even totems. Even there are even defensive totems, but there aren't very many, if any good defensive pirates. Pirates can fit almost everything. They synergize incredibly well with weapons, so if your class benefits from weapons and a synergy with a pirate, they can be very powerful. You can have your Dread Corsair, the 4-mana, 3/3 taunt, costs 1 less for each weapon of your attack. You can run that with Bogspine Knuckles and Shaman for a free card to evolve. You can play Pirate Warrior. You can play Pirate Priest, with Shadow Priest, Pirate Priest. You can play Pirate Rogue. There's even going to be a new pirate in Demon Hunter for next expansion, Patches the Pilot. Unsurprisingly, that card's going to be really good, probably pushing a pirate Demon Hunter. Pirates are just Blizzard's favorite child. It's very clear that they are. They have arguably most people would say the best card in the ever printed in Patches the Pirate. They have, arguably, most people would say, one of the best 1-drops ever printed in Treasure Distributor, and that's not even including class card pirates, like your Jolly Roger, your Fillet Fighter, your Prize Plunderer in Rogue, like your Bloodsail Deckhand in Warrior, like your Skipper, your Risky Skipper in Warrior, like your Ship's Trojan in Priest. You have such incredibly powerful pirates in these decks, to the point that it's like almost unfair. It feels like Blizzard explicitly is trying to make pirates more powerful than every other tribe. I could not tell you why. It has made a lot of people hate pirates as a tribe, because obviously when something is much, much, much more powerful than everything else to a significant degree and for a long time, it makes people upset because they want other things to have a time to shine. And pirates don't make that happen. But yeah, that's going to be it from me. Those are the best tribes in the game. If you enjoyed, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Tell me what you think down below. Was I right? Was I wrong? Would you have ordered any of these differently? I'm not going to listen to anyone that says pirates shouldn't be number 1. I'm not going to listen to anyone that says Quillbore shouldn't be number 11. Those ones are just, they're just a fact at this point. So don't even try it. But yeah, if you would like, you can join my 2 giveaways for a Perils in Paradise pre-order bundle that you can join, one, by either just commenting down below your favorite Hearthstone card, making sure you've subscribed and liked, of course, just because, and be subscribed. Or you can become a member of the channel to join a members-only giveaway, which obviously increases your chances, but it lets you support the channel as well. And yeah, that's going to be it for me. I'll see you guys next time. Peace.
Darker than they've ever been. It's evil.